Hi, everybody. Kevin O'Shaughnessy here with Schooley Mitchell of Red Bank. Another edition of what I like to call Spotlight on Local Business. Today, sitting with me is Bart Piotrowski from Computero. Am I saying that right?
Sure.
Awesome. He is an IT firm, and this is a very, very hot topic for a lot of different people these days. A lot of exciting things going on in that industry. So I thought we'd bring him on and talk about it a little bit. But Bart, why don't we just start with your background and sort of how you started Computero?
Hi, good morning. And thank you for having me on your show. So I started when I was in my teens. So I was always interested in computers. So even in high school, I was pulled out of classes to kind of help fix network problems and computer problems because not a lot of the teachers were trained in that in that art. And so for almost 20 years now, I've been working in IT. And I have been, the little person on the help desk that answers the phones and connects in, and slowly and surely moved up the ladder to being, like a network admin, where I oversaw servers for corporations. And then I ended up working for a healthcare company that developed software. That kind of brought me into the world of medical, equipment and records and things like that. And so. After that, I left to start my own company, Computero. That was in 2009. And ever since then, we've been focusing on enabling the smaller companies, the smaller firms to kind of have the better support, the better tools, the things that are normally reserved to, for the enterprises. We've found a way to kind of bring that to a lower price point and offer similar services or, on a similar level.
Oh, I got you. I guess that was going to be part of my next question because, there you were moving up the chain, in big corporate America, obviously probably doing well. It's a big step to, go off on your own. But I guess you're saying you saw maybe a little bit of a need or a niche market out there that you could fill and really make a big difference in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not only was there a need, but that need became, more and more evident as kind of as things progressed, as the rest of the world kind of joined us on this internet highway. A lot more people had access to computers. A lot more people had access to to the information that would allow them to do certain things. And obviously, there are people who are on the right side of this. There's people who are on the wrong side of this. And so whether you think of a small firm somewhere in Europe or a small firm here in the States. They are now pretty much being targeted by these hackers, these attackers that have really have studied. They have the skills, they have the knowledge, they have the tools, and in some cases, I suspect they even have funding. That is just nuts. It just is, and there's not much that we can do about it. But yeah, the need and the desire to kind of help and be on the lookout for the smaller firms was probably, kind of the initial stages of my founding Computero.
Right. No, and it makes sense. And you're touching upon it there. I mean, obviously in the news a lot lately and on everybody's mind is ransomware. And, the fear of you come in one day and everything's locked up. You got that email. Hey, you want your data back? We need 40K, 50K or plus, the thing that, and this is probably naive on my part, the thing I have a problem with, it seems somewhat random. So what can a business do to protect themselves, A, and then B, I know sometimes people, there's a little bit of a fear factor, but what are the odds really that a business gets hacked into like that? I always feel like, oh, that's 1 in a million, but maybe you can speak to the likelihood of that.
Right. So, I'll tell you that the biggest thing that a business can do is be on the lookout. So anybody who has any kind of infrastructure, and I mean, just as small as, a few computers, your infrastructure is very small. So look at the computers that you have, make sure you're not running outdated software, make sure your routing equipment, and routing equipment especially these days, but make sure that is up to date and is somewhat fresh. And by fresh, I mean probably less than 5 years old. Anything that is older than 5 years old, the manufacturers are putting them on end of life lists. The devices no longer get updates, and they're basically sitting ducks. So, invest some money and have a budget that, that would allow you to kind of go through and say, okay, you know what, we haven't upgraded that router in 5 years or 10 years. Yeah, now would be a pretty good time, and while you're at it, maybe review, the policies or the things that you have in that router. And, certainly some people may not be skilled enough, but this is kind of where we come in is, we will do these reviews with our customers on a regular basis. We will go in and say, hey, are we running the latest software? Are we running, is there any ports that are open that would allow somebody access? And to the point of ransomware, majority of it is just not knowing. So people set up these routers and it works and they forget about it. But that router is running a piece of code, and that code can be vulnerable to certain exploits. And, I'll tell you that there's probably not a week that I walked into my office and I didn't have an email about some kind of vulnerability or some kind of alert from CISA, or maybe the state troopers. Even the state troopers have an email blast where they disseminate this information and they say, hey, listen, be on the lookout for this, or look at, these indicators of compromise. So being in the know certainly helps us help protect our customers. And so if I could make a recommendation to anybody that's listening, if you yourself are not capable or don't have the skill necessary, then seek out individuals or seek out companies that do this, that can be those kind of, preventative, that can employ preventative practices to help your organization so that you're not kind of caught off guard.
Now, for you, you said you started with smaller businesses. Now, is there a minimum that a business needs to have as far as computer or desktops that you'll service, or is one enough?
So the answer is yes. That's enough. The trick is that the way we work is we engage in a contract that is that captures an hour of our time every month, and that kind of gives you that ability for. It does two things really. Number one is it lets you call in if you have any problems, but also gives us some insight into your environment. So we do have small packages for smaller businesses, and we have plenty of them. But really, what we're looking for is somebody that has 30 computers, 40 computers, 50 computers, all the way up to maybe 100, even 200 computers is the size of the companies that we presently service. These are certainly more costly contracts, but what they do is they add a certain level of monitoring and management that the basic stuff doesn't. So where on a basic contract, we can, we'll respond to some things, but on a full contract or on a kind of, we call it total care contract, we would kind of be responsible for everything. And, I'll tell you, there is a level of oversight there. Once you get engaged with us, we'll bring a certain level of security. If you're here, we'll bring it up to here. Now, are we going to bring your security or a customer security to the, government DoD level? No, it's not. Unfortunately, that's not the business we're in. But we have a pretty good track record, with the solutions that we install. And so part of our kind of ongoing review process is that every time something changes, we look at not just that one customer that it was affected by, but we'll look at the broad spectrum of all of our customers and say, okay, who else has this device? Who else has the service? Who else has it configured this way? And so that makes us highly effective because we can bring something from one industry and bring it over to another industry. And same thing with software solutions, right?
Yeah, that was going to be part of my next question, right? Because obviously there are a lot of IT companies out there, looking for business. So what would you say separates you from the competition? Just let the listeners or the viewers here get an idea of what they get a little bit extra from Computero.
Right. Yeah. I mean, no doubt about that. The experience is included, but efficiencies. Economics, there are situations where firms will ask us, hey, is it time to refresh our hardware? And we would look at their hardware and say, well, you know what? Not really. But they're coming, to us with that question, thinking that we're going to say, yes, you got to replace all your computers. And a lot of times the computers can be upgraded. Now, there's a fine line between, a 5-year-old computer that can last, maybe another year or two, and a 10-year-old computer, which probably should be replaced.
Yeah.
But funny enough, you ask, on that note, on the hardware side, it's in 10 years ago, I would say you should replace your computer every 4 or 5 years. Now, I think we can stretch that out to 6, 7 years. I mean, specifically, if we're talking about a desktop, laptops, depending on the usage, right? Because you got some people who like to eat over their laptops, or the laptop, takes a incidental dang on the way on the train, or something like that. So the laptops usually we say 3 to 5 years, but even those, we have computers that that still operate, and they're 10, 12 years old. So the computers themselves aren't really the concern these days. The hardware seems to be okay. The hardware seems to last, and you can kind of get your money's worth out of that hardware. It's the software, the services, and everything else that runs on top of it that is the kind of the big money spender now. And there also, we bring in efficiency. So, we advise our customers not to spend and have elaborate and very involved structures of data and cloud services, because it seems like there's a cloud service for everything these days, right? Mm-hmm. There's a dashboard for everything and cloud service for everything. And in my opinion, or in our opinion, less is more. So if you can find that one platform, be it Office 365, and kind of sit there and kind of use everything they have before you move on to another platform. And same thing with Google Apps, Google Workplace. We're stellar fans of Google Workplace. We think the product has evolved over the years, and it has a lot of features, and a lot of times companies come to us and say, hey, we need a video conferencing solution. And I'm like, you have it. It's part of your Google suite. Yet companies go out there and they invest absurd amount of money in video conferencing solutions. And I understand it. Sometimes it's for the looks of it, for the clientele. Mm-hmm. But long story short, you asked a question about what separates us is we're honest, we're truthful, we're economical, and we are reliable. So we're always there when the customer calls.
Well, that was going to be my next question. I mean, because I'm sure everyone's going to want to know, what's the support structure like? All right, I come in Monday morning, I'm not getting into my email or something. Am I waiting on hold? Am I leaving a voicemail? Am I talking to someone who's not here in the US? Take me through that.
So no voicemail. We are very big on no voicemail. So it happens occasionally. Maybe once a month that we get a voicemail because the support staff, was all on the phone, or happened to be rush hour. We call rush hour the morning rush. But long story short is you have 2 avenues of support. It's email or phone. And depending on the urgency of it, you can choose one or the other, but you'll always get a live person. You will always get somebody to speak to. And the business hours are Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. And we do offer emergency support for customers that subscribe to our, those higher tier plans. So if there's an organization out there that is looking for support that will, that requires some, emergency support after hours, we're happy to provide that as well.
That's awesome. That's good to know. I know, because that seems to be a lot of concern. I mean, we've come a long way from the days where you remember you'd get your new computer, you'd open up, you'd call like a Microsoft support or something, and someone from somewhere with like their first question, you'd have a problem, they'd be like, is it plugged in? Like, yes, it's plugged in.
So, on our end, because of our involvement, right, we are the liaison between the customer and that application vendor. And I'll tell you, well, actually, I can probably estimate that this happens, once every few weeks, where a customer calls us and they get something from the manufacturer, from the application vendor, and they say, no, you have to talk to your IT provider. And we would look at it, and we would diagnose, and we would troubleshoot, and then we would come back and say, no, sorry, it's not a problem with your network or your computers, it's a problem with the software. And the vendor would go back and say, yeah, sorry, you're right. So, yeah, it happens. And, I came from a software house, so I'm familiar with the tricks, right? And so, it's interesting because, we're in an environment where there is computers and applications, and just one of them needs to misbehave to affect something else. And it happens. It happens more often than we would want to.
Awesome. Well, listen, Bart, that's very informative stuff. That's great. I guess the only other question would be for me is like, I know you guys are swamped, but like, what does an IT guy like yourself do for fun at the end of the day, the weekends? If nobody's calling, what do you get to do?
Yeah, I like to spend time with the kids as much as possible, especially in the afternoons. You know, if I get out of work a little earlier, we'll take a bike ride with the kids. So that's probably my most favorite part of the day is just, you know, just riding around with them, having them explore, and oh, we haven't gone down this street yet. You know, oh, we never went down this way. And it seems like our bike rides are getting longer and longer, but I think it's good for everybody.
And does it look like, are they taking that same interest in computers as you are? Do you think you'll have some employees soon?
You know what? Yeah, you know what? I'm curious about that. I have a feeling that maybe one or two. Well, actually, who knows? Right now, it's just one on the fence, you know. And
Right.
she's kind of looking at me and seeing what I'm doing, and I don't think she understands, you know, holistically for what I do, or you know, they think that I just fix computers, and that's okay for now. They can think that, but I think you know, once they get a little older and they'll hear about all these other things that are happening, they'll understand. You know, information security is pretty interesting and pretty, you know, broad spectrum of you know, industry. But yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's just changing so rapidly and constantly. It's really, it's hard, you know, even for someone who's pretty tech savvy, it's hard for someone to just stay on top of these things. And that's another big problem for, you know, sort of small businesses, solopreneur type of guys who they have trouble relinquishing control sometimes. But the honest answer is they have more important things to do. They should leave this, you know, the expert IT stuff to guys like yourself. So, anyway, you know, your information is there, you know, on the screen. But what would you say to, you know, the viewers who maybe want to have a chat with you? Like, do you offer some sort of like a free consultation, like initial consultation about what they maybe have going on?
Absolutely. Yep. Just give us a call, 888-TECH-365. Just give us a ring, press the option for sales. We'll talk to you. We'll answer any questions you may have. And, you know, we can set up a consultation, not just on the phone. We can set one up, you know, in person. We don't mind going out there and meeting the customers. You know, we understand that's very important. So we'll come out there. We'll sit down with you. If you want, we'll do a walkthrough of your, you know, your setup, your network, your equipment, and give your honest opinion, you know, where you stand and where you should be.
That's great. Yeah, listen, everybody, the pandemic is pretty much over. Let's all get back to meeting in person. But I say that as we're doing a Zoom interview. But anyway, Bart, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. You know, very informative, and let's definitely catch up again soon, more about my own issues. So thank you again, and take care, everybody.